What's up, everyone? It is hot again today. It is really hot.
Yes, really hot.
We got some lemonade. Not happy lemonade either. It's too hot for that right now.
It's just regular lemonade.
Yeah. It's currently 95, so I guess it's a little cooler than the other days by 2 degrees. So we want to talk to you guys about butchering, how it went, our first time butchering. So we're kind of just going to go through some numbers. We have some clips that we'll be putting in periodically. We didn't want to do too much because of we don't know how much YouTube will let us. Well, being we're still pretty small, so we want to limit that, and we also know that some people can't handle it. I do want to say we butcher what was typically every year when we do chickens with our family. It's around 30 to 40 people butchering, I would say. And we would do anywhere from 200 to, there's been 300 a couple times, but normally around 200, 240 birds. With that many people, it takes us, I would say, 4 to 5 hours typically.
Yep.
And then you have probably about an hour, hour and a half of just bagging with the vacuum chambers. It was 99 birds, and we did it in 4 hours. And for an hour and a half, there was only 3 of us. Otherwise, there was always 4 of us. And we were trying to kind of figuring out how it all would work. And we actually, if we would have done them all whole, we'd have been done with 4.5 hours, 5 hours
just
at most with cleanup.
Yep.
Yep. It was really fast and efficient. What slowed us down is we broke down the chickens where you got breast, thighs, so forth. And I did 49 of them myself, and it took me 3 hours, which isn't bad when you consider, you know, what you're all doing. And then with the carcasses, we did bone broth. So we got quite a bit of stuff out of all these chickens.
Yeah.
And it took us all day, pretty much from sun up to almost sundown, with the kids and just lunch and everything.
Yeah, and the pressure cookers, we had 2 pressure cookers going with bone broth, so that took us into the next day.
Yeah, that took the
Had we started maybe right away doing it, it wouldn't have taken as long.
Yeah.
Or if we had pulled out our pressure canner instead of our pressure cookers. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with how everything turned out.
Yep.
For the first time, I'm surprised. I thought we would forget so many things. Like, we'd get into it and be like, oh, we need a knife, or oh, we need this. But there weren't too many things like that. No, we did pretty good. We did it pretty quick, and we had a system. So I'm gonna kind of walk you through like what we did. My boys were the ones that were getting the chickens and bringing them up to my brother-in-law Kevin, and he was in charge of doing the kill cones and scalding. So what he would do, and plucking, he would do is he would grab right where their jawline starts and he'd pull that down, and that's where you make your slit. And he would make it, and the head would basically fall off, and it would sit there, and the bird was so tight tucked in the cone, it doesn't fight and didn't bruise the meat. So it was actually really nice. Rather than using the typical metal kill cones, we actually used traffic cones that Matt just kind of cut down to the right size, and we measured it with a bird to figure out what size they would be, because those are a little bit more affordable than the kill cones, at least right now. I mean, it is butchering time, and it was one of the last things we waited to get.
Yep, and I took 5 inches off from the point, the narrowest point. I took 5 inches up off, 5 or 5.5 roughly in there. So once they were done with that, my brother-in-law put them in the scalder and dunked them a couple times, like 30 seconds. And the temperature, it was propane, so it was hard to try to keep, but we kept it between 145 and 152. And by doing that, they did very well, plucking wise. And the plucker, I would have to say, did very well. Like, there was no work whatsoever. What we did end up doing is taking the trash can from one of the gray trash cans that we had for the feed, and we put it over it, and you'd hold the hose spray in there and then turn it on, and by putting the water in there and everything, it made the feathers go to the bottom and cycle out to the bottom. And by having the top on, we didn't have water splashing up everywhere, so that was really nice. So from there they went to Sara. And what did you do?
Well, my job, I think Matt initially wanted me to help him gut the chickens. And although I'm all for doing this, I definitely came from a place before we were married of buying frozen chicken breasts, so it's a lot for me. So I figured out pretty quickly that I could handle cutting the necks off the chickens. And after a while, we learned that it was easier for Matt to gut them if, what was it, the...
Esophagus.
Was it the esophagus?
Windpipe, yeah.
Okay. If I would leave kind of the... This is kind of gross.
Yep. That's what we're talking about, not showing.
Yeah, that's why we're talking, not showing. I would leave kind of like the esophagus or windpipe on there so Matt could kind of pull the guts out easier. So I learned real quick that if I felt around on the neck, I could find that, and that way just kind of cut underneath it, and so it would save it from cutting, save you time. So that I learned pretty quickly, and it wasn't as gross as it sounds. And then I also cut the legs off the chickens, which I thought was going to be really difficult. I've only ever seen somebody do it in person with what do they use?
A snips.
A snips. So it makes it seem like it's really hard to cut through, but really if I just held the leg at the right angle and barely tried to slice with my knife, there was like a certain spot where I could cut right through. And
so if you have it where the breast is up on the chicken, and you know how your finger can bend this way, but it can't bend back? So basically what you're doing is you put pressure on the leg like this, and you make a slit right here where the crease is, and it pops, and then you cut the rest of the way, and that's all she was doing.
Yep. So yeah, that was my job, and then sometimes if Matt was falling behind, I would kind of open it up so he could take the guts out. I tried once, and it didn't go so well.
It was too warm.
It was warm in there, and that was just not my favorite thing. But I think it's really important that if we're going to do this, if we're going to raise our own meat, if we're going to kill it, we at least be a part of all this and experience it. Because if we want to eat chicken, we should kind of know where it comes from.
So after she was done with that, it would come to me, and I would get it, and it'd be the breast up. And what I would do is grab right above the, I'm going to call, it's called, some people call it the pooper, but I'm going to call it the vent. So you grab the skin right above the vent, and it's loose, and you make a slit where you can kind of see inside. And what you do is you take, and I wore gloves because I didn't want to get sick. I've gotten sick before butchering, and it's not fun. But you put your hand in, and you can feel the membranes, and you kind of just go around the cavity, and then you go around this side, and you put your hand down, and it just all comes right out. And I have a 5-gallon bucket underneath the table. It all falls into the table, and you cut down. So some people will cut and leave the tailbone on for like grocery stores and stuff. You can get more money because you're leaving more weight on there. But you cut the oil gland off. So to skip an easier step is what I did is I follow tailbone down to where it came to a point on each side, and that broke off and falls right in the bucket. The guts are gone. The vent fell with the guts. You go back in, and you have the heart left. You can take the heart out, and you can save it. The easiest way, what I do is there's a membrane in the back. When you start at the top, you go to the right or left, it don't matter. I would go to the right, and you can go around, and you can feel the rib cage start, and your fingers will guide around, and they pop that lung out, and you feel it hit where the spine is. So then after you do the right side, you go to the left side and do the same thing, and you come around, and it pops out, and you grab it, and if the heart's still in there, it's kind of like a handle, and you grab it, and you pull it out, and the windpipe will come with, and the lungs pop right out with the heart, and then you grab the heart and take the rest of the stuff off, put it aside. That was by far the easiest and fastest. My brother Kevin couldn't keep up with Sara and I when he was doing 4 birds at a time, so it was really fast doing it that way.
Yeah, I think overall it seemed like it was very efficient with each person kind of doing their job.
Yep.
And then your sister came.
Yep. And so we figured out really fast that we couldn't we couldn't keep in check with the barrels. So, and what I mean by the barrels, we took our 36-gallon trash barrels that we got from Uline, those gray ones we put all the feed in. We had 4 of them set up off to the side, and we had our well water running in, and I took another hose and I put it in there, and I used it as a siphon. So I had water going in and water going out, and it was cooling the birds. So you're cycling out the water and you're cooling the birds. So as the water got clear, we'd go to the next bucket, and we'd start in there and keep that going and keep it doing it. By doing that, it cooled down the birds, and my sister, she started doing that, so we didn't have to watch that, and that's what helped us stay on top and get ahead. And then she started getting some more free time, so she started the boiler for dunking the birds, the whole birds, and we used the bags. It's a heat shrink bag, and you put a straw. We have stainless straws we use. You put the straw so it goes into the cavity, and you put a zip tie around the bag and the straw, and you dunk it a couple times, and you'll see it start getting tight, and then you take out the straw and you pull the zip tie tight. And that was really fast. That took like seconds. It was really nice and really quick. So they wanted 30 birds total, and they did 10 holes, and we did 20 holes. She did those 30 birds, man, like 15 minutes. It was nuts.
The only thing that was slowing her down is we were putting them on,
Drying
was
racks.
putting them on like a drying rack, which her husband had made.
I believe it was 1.5 inch, or no, maybe it was 2 inch PVC, and it had PVC coming up every so often, like 2 feet, and we'd set the birds on there, and they'd dry so they wouldn't be so wet when you put them in the bag. And that's what just was slowing her down, basically, because she had to be so particular with that, but also she was
Just
using them
waiting
so
for 'em to
fast and they
dry.
weren't drying fast enough. So a couple of things we're going to do differently for next year. And then when it came to taking apart the birds into the pieces, I am pretty familiar with breaking down a chicken. I've done it quite a bit in the past, and then I've also talked to a couple butchers, but then I watched a YouTube guy that he's a butcher, and he broke one down, and so I said, I'll just fly through and do it. My brother-in-law had to go for a little bit to bid a job. I started doing it, and the time they got back, I was already done, and we figured if he was there, it would have been half the time. It'd have been at least an hour and a half, but I think we'd done it less than an hour breaking down all those birds, because we did 20 of their birds we dismantled, and we did 49 of ours. So it was quite a bit, but overall I would say it was well worth it and way easier than I thought it would be.
It was tremendously easier than I expected. And not nearly as emotional as I thought it was going to be.
The reason why I'm saying it's so easy is the way we gut it. And everyone in the world does everything different. But the system that we had in place went so smooth that, especially for the whole birds, it was well worth it. I would even, our average bird was, it was 4.5 pounds, okay? So, and we had, I think it was only a handful of 6-pounders and a handful of 3-pounders. And basically it was all from 4.5 to 5 pounds. And I would do that again. To me, those birds were the perfect size, where our family could eat a 4.5 pound bird probably in one meal, give or take on the day and growth spurts that the boys are going through. But even if you're a small family, that could be a couple of meals, for one chicken. So I definitely would do that size again, and we did all females. And I think I would do all females again.
I think it was nice, too, that they're relatively all the same size. And I
Yes,
think if
they're
you did
very
a
close.
straight run, you wouldn't get that as much.
And the reason why she's saying that is because roosters grow a lot faster. So you're going to have bigger birds. You'll find out that you'll have bigger birds if you do all roosters, or if you do roosters and hens. And the hens will be typically 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds difference sometimes in size, from what I've noticed from years of doing this with family.
Well, should we give them the numbers?
Yeah.
Is that what people really want to know? I don't know.
I don't know.
So we had figured out our numbers that when all was said and done, buying the chicks, this is just the stuff that was needed for the chicks, not things we'll be reusing. So we bought a plucker this year.
Yep.
Matt built 2 chicken tractors this year.
Chamber vac,
A whole bunch of barrels, the garbage cans for the feed. I mean, there are a lot of things involved that we will reuse and again. So we will reuse again and again. So they're not considered in the price. So if we considered that, these are probably some spendy birds.
Yeah.
But I'm so relieved that it went well. We will definitely do it again.
Yeah, and we've even been talking about we might do another round in the fall. It's definitely weird going out and doing chores in the morning and not have to deal with them now.
It's almost too quiet around here.
Yeah.
Like the laying hens don't make as much noise. So our spring 2021 chicken costs, we originally thought they added up to $8.62 per bird, which included the cost of the birds, some feed, a lot of feed, and some shavings when they were babies, basically some fine shavings to land. That was about it.
And we got the feed in bulk. We got that for 45 cents a pound.
Yes.
And it's organic.
Yes. And then we realized we didn't have bags included in there. So for the whole birds, those bags were 38 cents. The other ones kind of varied because we used different size bags. So we're just going to use that for a reference. For a whole bird, 38 cents per bag, which evened out to an even $9 per bird.
Mm-hmm.
Which some would think that's really expensive, right? You can go to the store and get a rotisserie chicken around here for probably $5-6.
But it's not organic.
But it's not organic. It's not grass-fed. Well, would you call it grass-fed?
It's just not organic.
It's not organic. And it's not local.
No.
And there is somebody here local who does chickens this way. And we're not sure if it's organic. We haven't been able to figure that out. But they charge $4 a pound. So that means even our 4-pound birds would be $16 birds.
Yeah.
And that was the only place we could find around here that had anything similar.
Yep. Crazy. When you really stop and think about it, $16 for a chicken. We have family members that go to Costco, and I believe Costco was like $18 or $19 for a whole bird, organic. So when you think about that, it's pretty cheap for, 20 minutes a day? Not even, to go out and feed them and move them and water them. Just pretty simple.
If you look at it of the quality of food, it was very affordable.
Yeah.
And something we otherwise probably wouldn't be able to afford to buy. I mean, that'd be a spendy chicken. We'd be eating a lot less chicken.
Yeah. So overall, the feed, I tried feeding different ways, and the best way I found, because I tried doing feed on the ground to make them scratch more and eat the grass. That wasted a lot more feed. Excuse me. And I won't do it that way again, because they eat the grass no matter what. When you move them, it got to the point where when I was feeding with the trough feeders, half of them wouldn't even come to the feeder, or if they would, they'd do it for a little bit, and they would go to the new grass and be eating it, especially the clover. So I was putting it on the ground. You just wasted too much, and I won't do that again. The other thing I did was the wet feed. Same thing, you put it on the ground, and it was like a waste. But I think you could, if you made your own wooden trough, or even out of PVC, you probably could save a lot of money that way. But that added a lot more time, because that's a lot of feed for 100 birds to be soaking in a lot of 5-gallon buckets. So the first, I think it was 6 days, it's 5.5 days, I did it, and I was like, it's not worth it, because I was feeding them twice a day. So finally we ordered some trough feeders, and it took a long time for them to come, and that's why we tried these other ways of feeding. When they did come, they were the easiest and fastest by far, and there wasn't any waste. So we actually went through less feed as they were getting older, and we should have been going through more. So there was that I would say it was 2.5. It was almost 3 weeks. So let's say 3 weeks of feeding those different ways. I think slowed them down and they didn't get the feed that they should have. And they probably would have been a little bigger birds too that way. So I'm curious the next round when I'm going to do the whole time with feeding with the trough feeder, and we'll see how they do it that way. Also, we were doing this on our lawn. So for those of you that want to do it in your own backyard, whether you live in town or whatever, this is our backyard and our kids play in here. So we would tell them not to go behind the chicken tractor, you know, because of the poop load the day after we move them. And then because we went 9 weeks with them also, and by doing the 9 weeks, we were watering pretty heavy behind them just to dilute the poop because they were dropping so much. And I got to the point where I probably could have moved them 3 times and load wouldn't have been so much on it. But that's just for next time. 100 birds is definitely max for a 10 by 10 or 50 birds per 10 by 10 chicken tractor. But I'm guessing, like, if I had 40 in there, that'd be even better. But
yeah, I think ideally 40 birds per tractor would be a good number.
Yeah, and then the last 2 weeks, if you go to 9 weeks, the last 2 weeks, I would move them 3 times if you can. If you can, it's not the end of the world. But just because I would do it just because of our kids, and that's the only reason why. Like you look at our lawn now, and it's growing fast. It's a lot of nitrogen.
I think they fertilized the lawn well.
Yeah. Yes, they did. I hope that helped a lot of you guys. A lot of people had curiosity on all of it. We'll try. If you guys, you know, let us know if you want to see more too. If we do it in the fall or when we do it next spring, because we're not going to stop. We're going to keep doing it ourselves. Let us know. We can show more clips. I definitely am not going to show any of the killing part for sure, but we can show you other parts if you guys feel up to it, and we'll show you.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that it's hard to talk about, but it's good to talk about and good to do.
So we'll see you on the next one, and there's going to be more chicken in our vlogs. Just on the grill.
I was like, wait, what? Cooked chicken. Cooking chicken.
I need some more ice.
Oh.
Cheers for a hot day. Bye.
So dumb. How many legs did you do in a bag?
8. And then I did it so it was like the skinny part was up, fat part, you know.
I should have done that. I realized after I started shoving it in, I'm like, oops. So we butchered not quite 100 chickens, but 99.